welcome to HIROC webinar, Responding to Water Leaks. We are here today to discuss the impact of water damage and proven loss prevention solutions. My name is Asuncion, Engineering Liaison at HIROC Insurance Services Limited. We are pleased to present this webinar in collaboration with Alex Holt, Account Engineer at FM Global. He is a professional engineer and has been with FM Global for more than 8 years. Welcome, Alex, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Jean. It's great to be here. Always a good time.
In this webinar, we will discuss HIROC's partnership with FM Global, trends in claims, and proven solutions regarding water damage. We will then conclude our presentation by highlighting available resources to all subscribers to help mitigate water damage losses. HIROC and FM Global are both insurers in the property insurance program. FM Global is a mutual insurance company whose capital, scientific research capability, and engineering expertise are dedicated to property risk management and the resilience of its client owners. These owners who share the belief that the majority of property losses are preventable. FM Global and HIROC share a core philosophy where policyholders are actual owners of the insurance company with a shared goal to prioritize risk management. There are over 800 standards developed by FM Global specifically for property protection, and these are available to all subscribers free of charge. We share the belief that the best way to keep premiums low is to avoid claims altogether. Majority of losses are preventable. Resilience comes to planning, preparing, and monitoring. In order to back this up, FM Global field engineers continue to assist subscribers to identify their exposures and provide proven loss prevention solutions. This graph shows that losses at poorly protected facilities are on average 4 to 7 times larger than at facilities with risk improvement. Water damage is the #1 property loss driver for healthcare organizations. Unscheduled downtime will have direct impact on patient safety, delays in healthcare services, your reputations, as well as contributing additional stresses to nearby facilities. In a global scale, FM Global data shows from 2007 to 2016 that the majority of property claims are related to water damage. From HIROC losses statistics, same historical benchmark, water damage and sewer backup show almost 70% of all property claims costs.
Something else I wanted to add here as well is that these statistics are from 2007 to 2016. And what we're seeing in the loss traffic is that from 2017 onwards, there's been a slight uptick in fire-related losses. But really the key takeaway here is that in general for hospital facilities, water and sewer backup is really the loss driver.
During the last 5 years, on average, 59% of property claims paid by HIROC are related to water damage. In 2018 alone, however, 69% claims paid is related to water damage. This shows the increase in frequency of water damage claims. Using the same historical benchmark, the 5-year average water damage claim was 86,000. However, in 2018 alone, it was 126,000. This shows a significant increase in the severity of water damage claims. Increase in frequency paired with severity of water damage claims are definite cause of concern. In the commercial property marketplace, many insurers drastically increase their property insurance rates, or increase water damage deductibles, or even restrict coverages. It can be a combination of these, or they may refuse to renew altogether. I will now turn it over to Alex.
Thanks so much, Jean. It's always great to be back and host another webinar. We had such great turnout and feedback from the Preparing for Winter webinar, which we hosted a few months ago. We're hoping we can share some more great resources with subscribers today as well. I wanted to start off today by touching on what some of the most common sources of water leaks are. As we read through the list of sources, it's extremely common for facilities to have most, if not all, of these systems present. Also worth noting is that while some of these are resulting in building systems that are within an organization's control, some of the items such as sewage systems, roofs and windows, as well as original installation deficiencies can take some time to deteriorate in quality and result in a failure. Another aspect to keep in mind is that some of these systems have pressurized water. Domestic water supplies can be in the range of 50 to 100 psi from public supply, and sprinkler piping can be as high as 150 psi within a system if there's a booster pump provided. Water that's at this high of a pressure would be expected to flow out of a pipe at a much higher rate, resulting in more water pooling and spreading within a facility. While these are the most severe, we'll touch on the most common sources of leak in the next slide. These are the top 3 sources of water leaks. As buildings age, the roof condition degrades, and any leaks that occur in the roof may make their way down into lower floors. Something also worth noting for roof leaks is that it's sometimes difficult to determine the location of a leak, resulting in a delay in repairs taking place. The second one is domestic water lines and drains. This is purely due to the sheer number of these systems and the fact that they are located throughout each facility. And the third is clogged toilets and sinks, being another leading source of water leakage. With people using paper towels, baby wipes, and other hygiene products, if they are flushed down a toilet, it could result in a blockage or an ensuing leak. These are things to keep in mind that typically exacerbate damage to a facility. By ensuring that you plan at a time of stable conditions, you can think logically about what is needed to be done. It also allows you to run through various situations and conditions and anticipate what actions would be useful to carry out. Formalizing these preparation activities into a plan is extremely useful to document specific details so they're readily available. As infrastructure ages, it's typically more prone to failure, so this could result in normal wear and tear, or also as a result of changes that are made but not performed correctly. An example of this would be capping off an old water supply line but using materials that are not compatible with existing piping systems, such as carbon steel or copper. By having the appropriate response equipment and abatement products available on site, the time taken to respond and perform mitigation strategies can be minimized. This includes having them all accounted for, documented, and reviewed regularly to ensure that equipment isn't used for other tasks and not returned to the designated area, such as a mobile response cart. Now we'll move through the various stages of a water leakage event, before, during, and after, and provide tips and solutions to mitigate damage at each stage. The first thing to consider is what can be done in the short term to prepare for an event. As I mentioned, pre-planning is the best method to reduce the amount of damage that can result from a water leak. The first, and likely most important thing that can be done, is identifying the locations of main isolation valves. This could be the main incoming valves in the basement mechanical or utility room, as well as any main isolation valves that may be present on each floor. By quickly shutting off these valves, it eliminates guesswork that may take place if facilities personnel try to locate the local isolation valve in an emergency situation. Of course, it's little value of knowing the location of the valves if you can't close them. That's why regular, typically annual, exercising of these critical valves should be performed. This ensures that they are not seized in the open position and they can travel fully into the closed. This may not always be possible as a result of hospitals having critical needs for water supplies, so fully closing domestic water valves may not be possible. This should be coordinated for an idle period when safe to do so. Second point here touches on monitoring temperatures. This may include opening interior doors to stairwells to ensure that there's sufficient heat present in the stairwells to minimize potential for freeze-ups. The bottom 2 points here are worth considering if there are any major changes made to a facility that involve high-value equipment. By reducing water present above this equipment, it directly reduces the possibility of a leak affecting the equipment if a failure were to occur. Sprinkler systems are usually installed in heated areas of buildings. However, when they're installed in colder areas such as loading docks or parking ramps, a dry system may be used. Here are some of the things to keep in mind for dry pipe sprinkler systems to minimize the potential for freeze-ups. The goal here is to minimize water being trapped in low points of the piping system where it could freeze and cause a failure. Some pumps are also critical to remove water from low or below grade spaces. These should be tested before heavy rainfall events, before spring snow melts, and if any sprinkler testing discharges water within the building, such as parking garages. Leak detection that's tied into a building automation system is an excellent warning method for water being in areas where it shouldn't be. Typically, server rooms will have leak detection below raised flooring. Another example is diesel generator rooms. They'll have leak detection around tanks and piping. And other critical areas may have leak detection as well. Unoccupied areas where employee or public access is minimal should be inspected regularly. These areas are sometimes not heated and are more susceptible to freeze-ups and ensuing water damage. This could include closets, stairwells, or basements. Here are just some of the great physical products that can help to minimize the hazard. Here we have a sump pump, which is pretty typical to see in a residential or most hospital facilities or even office buildings will have these. Worth noting for this is that it should be connected to a backup power supply so that in the event of a power outage, there's still the capability of pumping water out of the low areas of the building. Second item is a temporarily removable door seal, which helps to eliminate or minimize the footprint of a water leak occurring. The third one there is window caulking, making sure that windows are sealed up and there's minimal potential for any kind of water entry in the event of a rainfall event. Backflow preventers, this would be on the water lines leaving the facility. We want to make sure that in the event of a heavy rainfall or other city upset condition, that we don't have any dirty water coming back into the facility and causing issues through floor drains. The last item on the top row there is a motor-operated control valve, which can remotely control the position of the valve, shutting off water if needed. And then on the bottom, we have inline flow controller modules. And then at the bottom right, a leak detector, which remotely ties into a valve interface panel, so you can shut off the supply of water if there's too much in a given area. In the unfortunate case where a leak or release does occur, having a formal, written, and rehearsed plan is critical to minimize damage. Here are some of the key aspects to consider. There should be a designated personnel to perform each task. This will help to clear up confusion that may result in a crisis by having people who are trained for each function, such as a leader, valve isolator, someone to get the crash cart. The appropriate action can be performed promptly, minimizing damage as a whole. Floor plans with locations of key isolation valves will reduce response time. This ties into something that was mentioned earlier, where regular exercising should be performed. If site personnel are familiar with the locations of these critical valves, then the response time can be kept to a minimum. Isolate non-critical systems. In the event of an upset, isolate electrical and diesel systems if they're not needed during the time of the upset. Addressing the leak itself and removing the water. This can be via the use of a wet-dry vacuum, floor drains, diverting water flow to stairwells or outside, or we have cases where smashing a toilet is sometimes the best option because there's a drain built into the toilet itself. Something to keep in mind, if the toilets are mounted on the wall, that's not always an option, but something to keep in mind. Regular drills are critical to ensure that personnel are trained and knowledgeable in the tasks they need to perform. Prompt action in removing water itself is imperative to minimizing damage. The longer the water sits within a building, the more likely it will seep into structural or building components and create potential for warping of drywall or mold to form. Here are some of the most critical items to have available on a response cart. The reason why we recommend a response cart is that it's a mobile unit that can be taken directly to the area of a leak, and the necessary equipment is all present and accounted for. If toolkits are utilized or the equipment is not gathered in advance, this may result in some critical equipment being forgotten. A qualified restoration contractor should be brought on site to assist with remediation if it's found that the extent of damage is too much to handle by in-house personnel. And as always, FM Global and HIROC can assist in the hours and days following an incident. Our claims teams will be able to assist with handling any applicable claims activities that may be needed. Now we'll spend a few moments going into a recent loss to see what went well and what can be learned from the event. This event occurred in a 6-story hospital building with about 135,000 square feet of space. It had various departments present on each floor, including special procedures, labor delivery, pre-op holding areas, patient rooms, cardiac laboratory, and office space. During the holidays, while the number of personnel was at a reduced number, a water leak occurred on the top floor of the building. Also worth noting is that normally there were 15 to 20 maintenance personnel present on site during normal operating hours, but on this holiday there was only one general maintenance person. This one general maintenance person was not familiar with the location of the main water shutoff valve, which resulted in it taking 90 minutes to isolate the water supply. This resulted in water flowing all the way from the top floor of the building down to all of the levels below. This totaled in approximately 46,000 square feet of the building, which was about a third in all. After the event, it was determined that it was a steel cap which was installed on an old water supply line that failed within a wall on the 6th floor. Over time, this steel cap corroded and failed within the wall, releasing water. Now we'll touch on what are some of the key takeaways from this loss. The most notable lesson I wanted to highlight here is that personnel on all shifts should be familiar with the location of these critical water shutoff valves. We see all too often that the main facilities personnel or plumbers are familiar with the locations, but that off-shift or backup personnel may not be fully aware of the building features. By running through mock scenarios ahead of time, the duration of water flow in this case could have been reduced from 90 minutes down to under 30 minutes. Ensuring that work is being done on old infrastructure, for example water lines, that it's being done correctly and with the proper materials, this should also help to minimize failures. And as I touched on earlier, manually exercising these critical main shutoff valves is very important so that we know they'll function properly in the event of an emergency. Since this is the most common type of loss to occur for hospitals and office occupancies, we've worked with HIROC to develop a template which can be used for each facility to develop a comprehensive response plan. This outlines each of the items discussed during this webinar and is structured in a format that helps facilities to consider key mitigation strategies to minimize damage from a water leak. It can be found at this link on the screen. Gina and myself are also available to review existing plans and provide feedback as necessary. I've touched on freeze-ups many times throughout this webinar. The checklist at this link helps to identify some of the actions to take before winter weather to mitigate from this hazard. A flood checklist is also available from Jean or myself, which can be useful when dealing with winter thaw and ensuing spring snow melt or heavy rainfall events. We also offer online training for key human element programs, such as hot work, impairment management or red tag, sprinkler maintenance and testing programs, and many more. If there's a need for larger groups to participate in this training, we can have a field engineer assigned to visit specific locations and provide this training to facilities or project staff. We also have the capability of revisiting sites for specific hazards that need additional risk improvement. This Liquid Damage Loss Control Center page is a detailed resource page that specifically focuses on water damage and actions that can be taken before, during, and after a water release. It can be found at fmglobal.com/liquid. Now we'll turn it back over to Jean to discuss a few other items.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. Your guidance and tips will help our subscribers to be even more resilient. As an insurance partner of HIROC, FM Global works with subscribers like Kingston Health Sciences Center to help keep facilities safe and to help mitigate property losses. This podcast is available on all major podcasting apps and at hiroc.com/podcast. Thank you for participating, and please email Alex and myself if you have any questions. Thank you, everyone.